Today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp makes it easy to get matched online with qualified therapists. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/super. That's betterhelp.com/super.
Hey, brother! And welcome everyone to another edition of Ben and I defending unhinged Harry Potter theories we draw at random out of this hat.
Yeah, this is quickly becoming one of our favorite segments altogether because, as you guys know, we've been making Harry Potter theories for over a decade at this point in time. And sometimes, you just gotta go outside of the box a little bit to some ludicrous sounding ideas and then use the entire wealth of our combined Harry Potter lore to just try to defend to the end of the world, these ridiculous ideas.
Exactly. So we've got a whole fresh batch of things we haven't seen before, and we're gonna dive on in and see what happens.
Hey, brother! Jay, would you do the honors?
I would be the honored. This theory comes from Connor. Could Dumbledore choosing to die to protect Draco's soul have given him sacrificial protection?
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Hey, brother! Could Dumbledore have cast sacrificial protection on Draco?
Okay, so this is gonna be a very interesting situation because there are hyper-specific parameters that are required in order for sacrificial protection to occur, and we know of two of them.
Right, it's not just that you died for someone, right? The big two that we see are Lily dying for Harry and Harry dying for everyone.
And the big thing you kind of have to take a look at, and a lot of questions that have been asked throughout the years, is why doesn't James's death ultimately cast sacrificial protection on both Lily and Harry? Because James dies moments before, and he even tells Lily, take Harry and run.
Right. The difference comes down to when Snape asks Voldemort to spare Lily. So Voldemort goes into the room, he says, step aside, girl, you don't have to die or whatever.
Exactly.
Right. He gives her the choice to live, and she chooses to die.
And that is ultimately what's going to make the difference in this specific situation. And the same thing is also true at the Battle of Hogwarts, where basically Voldemort summons Harry into the woods to die.
Offers him a choice to come and die.
Right.
Harry accepts.
He accepts.
He chooses to die.
He chooses to die. And that is what ultimately casts sacrificial protection over everybody at Hogwarts and all the defendants and everything, because he has already gone through and died for everybody when he was given a choice.
Exactly.
So the question here is whether or not Dumbledore is given the choice to die, because a big part of what Dumbledore is doing in his pre-arranged plan with Snape to kill him is in the name of protecting Draco's soul.
Right. Because he doesn't have to do it. He already knows the plan is for Draco to kill him. Snape has told him that, and Dumbledore says, let's go ahead. You have to do it, Severus. You have to kill me instead. Right? So in that way, he chooses to die, I suppose. Not that anyone's forced the decision upon him. He just sort of steps into the line of fire. The moment comes, Snape points the wand at him, and in the moment, it feels like he's taking a second to relish it or something. But in actuality, he's taking a moment to be like, are you sure you want me to do this?
Severus, please.
Right. It sounds like Dumbledore's begging when you read it the next time. Instead, begging him not to. Instead, you find out he's begging him to do it.
That's right.
So I think Severus, please might constitute choosing.
I think it does. I think it does.
Yeah.
And I mean, the big important thing here that I think would be so kind of magical about this, that really makes it kind of heartwarming, is that Draco, as far as Dumbledore is concerned, is an innocent soul. And Draco is a young man who has been misguided, very much like Dumbledore was as a youth himself with Gellert Grindelwald in those early days.
Exactly.
And so this is literally Dumbledore having so much compassion for the purity of a soul that he is willing to die in the name of protecting that person and the sanctity of their soul in the process.
Now the question is, who is he saving him from? Because it is Voldemort attacking Harry and it is Voldemort attacking Lily that casts it, and that protects people specifically from Voldemort. But Snape is the one who does the killing. So is Draco protected from Snape or from Voldemort?
Voldemort.
Voldemort, I agree. And honestly, I don't really see why this can't be true. The only thing that would disprove it is if at any point in the future we saw Voldemort try to attack Draco, and then it would no longer work. But at no point in book 7 does he actually do that. So I think if he had tried, this could have come into play, but he doesn't, so it doesn't.
There you go. That is how Draco survives Deathly Hallows. Boom. Alrighty, you ready? Here we go. So this question is going to come from Viola Cola and The Wise Griff, who say, the Marauders Map is a collective Horcrux for the Marauders. That's why they can communicate through it, like Voldemort and the Diary.
Oh. Hey, brother! What if the Marauders Map is a Horcrux?
This one's going to be very interesting because we have a lot of comparisons going on between Riddle's diary, which is a physical thing that is capable of communicating in the voice of its original owner, which is of course Tom Riddle, and it is of course a Horcrux. So the question here is that when the Marauders are making the map, are they in this kind of unique way, almost pouring their own heart and soul into the construction of it itself?
Right, because the trick here is that if they've poured all 4 pieces of their soul into it, one, it's very weird because now it's almost like a combined Horcrux.
Right.
It's one vessel holding 4 souls. The tricky thing is that all 4 of them die and the Marauders Map survives. And if that's true, then it seems like none of them should have been able to die.
It's an interesting question, and I feel like it almost extends a different layer, because it's almost I think that the question of whether or not it's a Horcrux is almost the answer almost has to be no, but then there's also sort of the love crux that we see formed when Voldemort takes Harry's blood into his veins in the graveyard, which is it is not necessarily created in exactly the same capacity, but it is kind of functionally doing something similar. But the thing I would point to as a possible scenario that may have partitioned a piece of soul as far as the Marauders Map is concerned is that at the end of book 1, Dumbledore tells Harry that there is one thing that Severus can never forgive James for, which is saving his life. So it's almost as if what may have happened here is that when Snape ventured into the Whomping Willow in basically in pursuit of Lupin, if there is enough scenario involved that Snape's perceived potential death could be enough to fracture souls.
His potential death could be enough to fracture souls. And that's what poured a piece of the soul into the map?
Correct.
Right. I suppose the other half of it could be, is there any moment in which the map might have been considered destroyed enough for the soul inside of it to allow them to die?
Oh my gosh, that is a fantastic question.
Because the map is still pretty intact.
It is pretty intact, and it feels especially if we're comparing it to the diary, which bleeds ink everywhere, it feels like it would need to do something similar.
Right. But they would have needed to kill somebody, right? Yeah, that's what you were saying.
Yes.
The act of maybe killing Snape was enough to do it.
Was enough to fracture their soul, which if you're a good and pure person, I like that you've got a hand up.
Here it is. The act of maybe killing, Snape. Boom, bam. Who was going to do it? It was Sirius. No, was it James?
James saves him. Sirius played the joke.
So it could be James and Sirius. I will consent to having souls in the map.
Okay.
Right? Okay. Then how did they die? Great question. Here's how you do it. There are other ways of repairing your soul, are there not? Who does James marry? Severus's best friend, Lily Evans. James is a great guy at this point. He feels remorse for the way he treated him. Boom. That's it. And same with Sirius. He doesn't like Snape, but he can feel the remorse for having made the mistakes in his youth. Even Dumbledore tells Harry, Severus was too old and wise and mature to fall for such simple. Tells Harry that Sirius was too, mature to fall for such, chiding. It's he's putting on a big show for Harry, but, Sirius doesn't, he doesn't like Snape, but he does feel bad. They are on the same side.
Right.
Thus removed. Thus able to die. Boom!
Wow!
We did it!
I was like, we're gonna have to scrap this one because we are not there, but we got it! I like it!
We did it! Whew. Next.
Nice one, James!
All right, what do we got here? Oh, I'm breaking the tag. What do we got here? All right. This comes from Lightning Force 10. By the way, if you want to submit a theory to the hat, you can become a quizmaster over on our Patreon at patreon.com/SuperCarlinBrothers. Link in the description down below. This one comes from Light Force 10. Hedwig is an animagus and a member of the Order of the Phoenix. Oh boy! Why didn't you say so?
I know, I love it already.
Maybe.
You ready?
Right.
3, 2, 1.
Hey, brother! Guys, Hedwig is not just an owl, she's an animagus.
How about that? This is a very interesting one because if Hedwig is an animagus, then on their way to school in their very first year, both Ron and Harry have pets, both of whom would be animagus.
Unregistered animagus. And you're like, wow, what are the freaking odds of that? Not that bad because the group of friends that preceded them had 3 unregistered animagus.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so how are we going to get there? Because I think the fact that Harry receives Hedwig specifically at Diagon Alley on his first ever visit and like entry into the wizarding world is very interesting. And if there is another detail that we could potentially look at, it is what else they collect on this particular day, which just so happens to come from vault number 713.
The Philosopher's Stone.
The Philosopher's Stone.
Okay, so here's the thing. I think I see where you're going with this. This request says that they are a member of the Order of the Phoenix. Dumbledore eventually tells Harry when he's telling him about the prophecy that he has watched him closely for his entire life. Closer possibly than he even knows. It often seems like Dumbledore knows what happens everywhere in Harry's life, but how could he? I'll tell you how, because he has a spy inside, and that's Hedwig. Right?
Oh, yes. Okay,
right.
So Hedwig is capable of communicating
Hedwig
too.
can communicate back to Dumbledore. It's like, oh, sending me out for a flight, bit of a long one. Ha! Took a hard right turn over to Dumbledore. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
Right. And Order of the Phoenix, no problem. Because you know who gives Harry Hedwig is Hagrid, member of the Order of the Phoenix.
You know who Hedwig is uniquely capable of finding all throughout Goblet of Fire in hiding? Sirius Black, member of the Order of the Phoenix. Okay, so
how are they doing this? Because the Order of the Phoenix has better ways of communicating with each other than whatever.
Then whatever. We normally go chocolate frog card here.
Yeah.
The member of the Order of the Phoenix has better ways of communicating with themselves
Umbridge's
than
fireplace.
Umbridge's fireplace. That's the one we got there in the end. We are smart, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. So here is where I'm going with this, is that if you recall, after Harry receives his snowy white owl, he flips through one of his most recent books that he has just purchased. History of Magic. However, if we know something about Bathilda Bagshot, who wrote A History of Magic, is that she does not cover anything from the past 100 years, because she is covering history prior to that. So then, all of a sudden, it's sort of like, who do we know that could have existed prior to 100 years ago? And I actually think there's a very interesting answer, especially when you combine it with the Philosopher's Stone being picked up on the very same day. And you might think Nicholas Flamel. However, Hedwig is a female, although also in extended age, next to Nicholas Flamel is his wife, Perenelle.
Perenelle Flamel.
Flamel.
You think Perenelle Flamel is Hedwig?
Perenelle Flamel is Hedwig.
Man.
And the idea here is that even at the end of the book, Dumbledore tells Harry that they have enough elixir left to set their affairs in order. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of thing where you might think like, okay, that could be like a few weeks. It could be a few months.
Right.
However, Hedwig makes it 6 more years.
Who's to say how long it's supposed to be?
That's right.
You know?
That's right.
Fair enough. And you know what? When you see old Nicholas Flamel back in Fantastic Beasts, he's pretty white. You know? He's got the right coloring for... I can't imagine his wife is looking that different at 600 plus years old.
What does the name Perenelle mean?
I don't know.
Would you mind if I took a quick gander?
Pause.
I had you looking in the wrong section. How could I be so stupid? stupid.
Okay, turns out Paranel just means rock or stone, which tracks with, like, Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah, that does fit. That fits rather nicely. Although there is also something called a para-wig, which is a powdered white wig, which is like Paranel, powdered wig. Para-wig.
Right, like if you're trying to draw the... Like, if you have a para-wig and you're like, how do I get Paranel to, like, a para-wig? You're like, Hedwig, right? Maybe there's some linguistic pattern you could make there.
There's at least something, yeah.
If you wanted, I don't hate Paranel Flamel as Hedwig, who's reporting back to Dumbledore. Because you know who else is basically a member of like the original OG Order of the Phoenix, like pre-Voldemort, like Grindelwald times? Nicholas Flamel.
Boom, bam. Hedwig is an animagus. Let's see what we got here. This question comes from Inching. Snape is Harry's father.
Snape is Harry's father? Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Hey, brother! Hey, brother! What if Snape was actually Harry's father?
Goodness gracious, this one's going to be very difficult to piece together. However, I feel like we can jump off in a very important flat level surface here, right? Which is basically the fact that one of the most confusing and perplexing details about Severus Snape is the fact that like so long after Lily's death, he is maintaining his hardcore commitment to the cause of protecting her own son.
Right.
So the question almost required to be is how Snape could be the father of Harry and also have such a rampant distaste for him as a person. And it would almost have to be the case that Snape believes that his own decision to have a child with Lily is ultimately the thing that led to her death. And therefore, Harry is a constant reminder of how Snape put Lily into the crosshairs of Lord Voldemort.
I mean, he did that either way by telling.
He does it either way, but consider this for just a moment, is that in order for the prophecy to be correct, it would mean that the parents must have thrice defied Lord Voldemort. And if Snape is Harry's father, then it would mean that James and Lily thrice defying him don't actually count. And you might be like, well, wait a second then. That would mean that there is no chosen one, except there are two boys born at the end of July to whom the prophecy may have referred.
Could have been Neville instead.
It not only could have been, it only was ever meant to be.
Only was ever meant to be. Here's the other possibility. Snape doesn't even know he's the father.
Oh, dear.
You know what I mean?
So then
yes, dear indeed.
Oh, I see what you mean. I see what you mean.
Right? Because here's the thing. Snape like despises Harry because he reminds him of James because he's got like the black hair and whatever, right? But you know what color Snape's hair is?
Black.
It's black. Harry has untidy hair. Snape has oily, greasy hair, right? Like they're not that far off. Maybe James doesn't even know that it's Snape's. You know, they style Harry after James because of course they do. He thinks he's the dad. James loves him like a son. He believes he is.
Okay, here's this too. This is kind of interesting as well. Think about the Half-Blood Prince. When Harry first finds the book and he is able to communicate with it so ridiculously well, he immediately goes to the belief that the Half-Blood Prince must have been his father. Right? So much so that he actually goes and questions Lupin about it.
Right.
And he says, James never asked us to call him a prince. And he wasn't a half-blood.
Right.
But so, it's like, what if the reason that Harry is able to resonate so perfectly with the Half-Blood Prince is because he is his own kin?
And think about it like this. Snape hates Harry, right? Okay?
We know that for sure.
We know that for sure, right? Even though in this scenario, Harry is his son. He doesn't know it, but he hates him because he recognizes him. I think because now you could argue that he recognizes himself in Harry. And if there's one other person Snape hates more than anyone, it's himself.
Boom, bam. Harry is Snape's son.
That is exactly the sort of vulgarity that I want to eradicate from the distinguished halls of Hogwarts.
Yo, we got to take a quick pause right there to give a huge thank you to today's sponsor, Shopify. So you all may already know this, but I like ideas, but Jay is excellent with execution. And when it comes to business, we make a great team. But whether you have a J in your life or not, Shopify can be the grease in your wheels to get yourself from the daydream to making your first sale. And I remember setting up our own merch store and how incredible it was to see concept become reality in no time flat. And that's because Shopify's easy to use templates require no coding, and they even have an AI assistant called Sidekick to help you along the way. In my personal opinion, Shopify's checkout process is just unrivaled. Like, have you ever gotten to the checkout page when you're buying something and they ask for like your resume and library card just to like complete the purchase? Well, Shopify utilizes Shop Pay to make the process for your shoppers a breeze. So if you're serious about hearing your first, start your free trial at shopify.com/SCB today. You heard that right. Start your free trial today at shopify.com/SCB. One last time for safety, shopify.com/SCB.
Guys, we also need to say thanks to Factor for sponsoring today's episode. Let me paint you a little picture here, all right? Imagine this. You wake up on a beach, then you rob a bank vault, you escape on a dragon, you fight a war, have a brief encounter with the ghost of your mentor, follow some ramparts, and you're armory crawling towards your wand when hunger strikes. Because Factor provides fully prepared meals straight to your door and are ready to go in just 2 minutes. And with over 100 rotating weekly meals, we've got options. And the occasion calls for protein. So I'm reaching for my ultimate preference from the premium collection: truffle butter filet mignon, potato and leek mash, and roasted carrots. Wouldn't it be great if Harry just paused the army crawl to eat a filet mignon before continuing the fight?
Will you stop eating?
Boom! Just like that, nutrition goals have been met, and I'm ready to fight the forces of evil. So check it out for yourself and head to factormeals.com/super50off and use code super50off to get 50% off and free daily greens per box with new subscription only while supplies last until September 27, 2026. See website for details. This one comes from Bouillon Cube.
Ooh!
The Muggle tramp killed for a Horcrux was a previous Wolves orphanage child.
Oh man!
Hey brother! What if Voldemort hunted down other kids from the orphanage?
This has some weight to it, almost certainly, because one of the unusual things that we immediately learn about like some of the other victims that Voldemort ultimately pursued to create his Horcruxes don't feel all of that important at all.
Right.
You know, it's
Albanian peasant.
Albanian peasant, yes, like a Muggle tramp. Yes, yeah, exactly. So I think that like what you've got going on here is that it's not that the significance of the person he killed isn't there. We just don't know what it is.
Right.
And we also know that a big portion of the Horcrux lessons that Harry is taking with Dumbledore in his 6th year have to do with revisiting Voldemort's own past. And a big portion of that, even at Wolves Orphanage, is the way in which he collected these like trophies and trinkets.
Right.
And part of
magpie-like tendency.
Exactly. And even the selection of the cave as a hiding point for the Locket Horcrux has to do with a trip that he took with the orphanage.
Right.
Like, that's how he ultimately finds it.
So you could even see a situation wherein Voldemort he takes 2 of the kids down to the cave.
Yes.
Right? Which should be pretty impossible. And we have an entire theory that the cave is like the counterpoint to the basin of the cave is like the counterpoint to the pensive.
Right.
It is like a literal dark place.
Right.
Like that is calling out to them. So if Voldemort gets in there with these kids, there is like a high chance that it scars them for life. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That can make you not so great. Maybe that like they're already starting out in an orphanage and maybe now they're like really traumatically damaged from this particular trip. Not to mention they were being tortured by an 11-year-old dark wizard who didn't know what his powers were yet. Like you can see where maybe that person goes down a particular line of life that doesn't take them to very good places.
That's true.
Right? Plus, they would be amongst the only 2 other people in the world to know about some tiny connection from Tom Riddle to the cave.
The ultimate person to seek down.
Exactly. So when you make, now I'm thinking maybe the Locket Horcrux, right? If you're hiding it in there, you're going to kill the other person who knows about the cave, the Muggle tramp, who was a tramp because you messed them up as a kid.
Holy crap, it's too good.
That one works pretty good.
That is very
I like
solid.
that one a lot.
Okay, we got there.
Woo!
Absolutely sold.
Sold on that one. That one needed explaining. Thank you, Bouillon Cube, I think. Well done.
And here we go. This one is going to come from this. That says, the prophecy is not real. Trelawney just made it up to impress Dumbledore at the job interview. Incredible. Okay.
Hey, brother! Hey, brother! Look, we all know Trelawney's a fraud, but what if she's like a capital F super duper fraud, never real, even once fraud?
Yes. So one of the very unusual things, I feel like I say very unusual at the beginning of every single one of these explanations, but you know what's very unusual? All of it. It's the wizarding world. Okay. Something that we have picked up on throughout the years is that almost every single one of Trelawney's predictions actually does come true in some capacity. So like even if you start right at the beginning of divination class where she points out to Neville to try to use the blue one because she's quite fond of the pink
ones.
He then does promptly break a teacup.
Right, as if they can't just repair it with magic, but whatever.
But no big deal, yes. But the thing about her being correct so very often is that it actually does give you some sense that maybe she is capable in a very mild capacity of predicting the future. And it seems like in most instances, she doesn't actually have a great sense of when she is doing it.
Right.
For example, before the lightning struck Tower, she is going through all of her tarot cards and she's like, the Knave of Spades who dislikes the questioner, which is a direct reference to Draco. And she doesn't know that it means Draco, but that is what happens on that exact same evening. So if you were to go back to this interview, we know that Trelawney is actually short on funds as well. That is why she is at the Hogshead.
Right.
She says, wouldn't recommend it, bed bugs.
However,
funds were short.
Funds were short. Dumbledore says she chose for her cheapness.
That's
Indeed.
right.
So here's the thing, though. The prophecy orb, we know for sure, exists in the Hall of Prophecy.
Correct.
Right? Now, here's the thing, though. That makes you think, that it has to be a real prophecy. I don't think so. We can just assume that for sure Sybil has, this would still count her as a seer, but it would mean that literally every time she makes what makes you a seer is that when you make predictions about anything, an orb will appear in the Hall of Prophecy.
Interesting.
Right? So even if you are complete BSing your way through something, it's showing up. It means when she said Neville's gonna break the pink cup, there's an orb for that. And so when she lies to Dumbledore, because she can tell this interview is going downhill fast, and she's like, what would be a really good Hail Mary right here? How about something about Voldemort?
That's right, yes.
Right. Because even in that, she doesn't say the one with the power to defeat Voldemort. She even, you'd think, full-on prophecy, you just say his name. Right?
Yes.
Right? She still says Dark Lord because she's still scared, because she's BSing it. But because she made a prediction, because she's got that seer connection, it shows up. And she's such a good actress that Dumbledore and Snape and Voldemort are all like, well, this is real.
And that's exactly it, because even Dumbledore tells Harry is that, not every prophecy in the Hall of Prophecies come to fruition.
Exactly.
The only thing that is actually making this particular prophecy come true is that Voldemort places stock in it. And Voldemort places stock in it because of everything else that has basically happened up until this point. And so if Harry does absolutely nothing, then Voldemort will just kill him and it will fulfill the prophecy.
Right.
As far as anybody else is concerned.
Right.
It would fit.
Yeah.
And so if you're to look at it like that, and you have seers, even multiple seers out there in the world, then when you go into the Hall of Prophecies and you see so many spun orbs, all of a sudden you start to realize that not all of these predictions actually have to have significance. the prophecy about Voldemort and Harry is a little bit of a needle in the haystack because there's probably an orb in there for Neville breaking the teacup.
Probably, exactly. Like if you had a weatherman prophecy person, there's just like a whole row of like, it's probably going to rain Saturday.
That's exactly right.
You know what I'm saying?
That's exactly
now,
right.
Now the second prophecy, Harry even suspects in the moment, like, was that some weird flourish at the end of the night? But here's the thing about that prophecy is that whether or not Harry heard it, it doesn't change the events of the night at all. He doesn't regard it again. It all just happens anyway. So it could have just been some weird performance. Next. Poison Dart Fraud says, the reason Harry got all the owls isn't because they couldn't reach him, it's because McG wanted to mess with the Dursleys.
Love it immediately.
Hey, brother! Hey, brother! Does Professor McGonagall have more of a sense of humor than you realize?
I almost, like, immediately the thing that my mind goes to is two separate instances altogether, and both of them have to do with a more advanced forward version of McGonagall, specifically in her battle against Umbridge. Because there are two moments where you have McGonagall directly feeding into the entity that is Peeves the Poltergeist.
Yeah.
Because both are very Peeves-driven moments. But the idea behind Peeves is that he is the manifestation of rule breaking. And if you think about McGonagall as a character, you would tend to think of her as a very strict rule follower.
150 points from Gryffindor.
That's right.
For sheer dumb luck.
But if you remember, there's two different occasions. One of them is when Peeves is up on the chandelier and he is loosening it as to like create further chaos to disrupt Umbridge's reign over the castle. And Harry swears, hear McGonagall whisper, that it unscrews the other way.
Yeah.
Which would be McGonagall directly contributing to what otherwise is a giant Fred and George situation.
Exactly.
And Fred and George, if anybody's feeding into Peeves the Poltergeist, like they are like a supercharger.
They are. They're like
turbo engine.
Right. Yeah, they're just like pouring the diesel fuel right on inside.
That's right.
Yeah.
But then the other instance is going to come at the end of Order of the Phoenix as Umbridge is basically being shooed away from the castle by no less than Peeves, who is whacking her on the head with a walking stick. Something that McGonagall would have intervened on, except she happened to loan her walking stick to Peeves.
Right, so she is really encouraging Peeves a lot in the fight against Umbridge. So you know she's got it in her.
That's right. And
plus,
I was going to say, if there's anybody like Umbridge-like in the story, otherwise, it's got to be Aunt Marge and the Dursleys.
And the Dursleys.
Yes.
Yeah,
so,
the Forerunners.
That's right. So when McGonagall, who does love Harry and highly respects like his meaning in the wizarding world, spends an entire day scouting out these people and even tells Dumbledore, these are the worst sort of muggles imaginable.
Right.
She is like, I am not comfortable with the situation where we are leaving Harry James Potter on their doorstep on this evening.
Right, not at all.
At some point in the future, we're going to get ours.
We're going to get it, right? We're going to get ours and they're going to get owls, right? Because here's the other thing. How do they know Harry's not getting the letters, you know?
That's a good point.
They seem to absolutely know, but I love the idea where Harry gets it and the next day they just keep coming anyway.
That's it. Yes, it's like we are going to just inundate number 4, Privet Drive, with owls.
How many owls, McGonagall? All of them.
I've always wanted to use that spell.
Do you think she used, Pierre Totem Owl Motor?
Yes, I absolutely do. She took like the entire
She walked up to the owlry and she's like, listen up, everybody. This is going to be fun.
Yes.
We're going to have fun with this one, okay? Okay, there's some muggles. The worst sort imaginable. I've got a letter for each of you.
Good luck.
Maybe, Godspeed.
I've always wanted to use that spell.
Item number next. Let's see what we... Okay, let's see here. Canyon Fjordkarst says Hedwig isn't actually dead.
Oh, all right.
Another Hedwig question for us.
Yeah, okay. All right. Hey, brother! Hey, brother! What if Hedwig isn't actually dead?
All right, think about this. When Harry goes into the forest to die, he uses the resurrection stone to bring those who are like most important to him back.
Right.
And we get Lily, we get James, Sirius, Lupin. You know who we're missing?
No!
Hedwig, who he knew for way longer than any of those jabronis, I'll tell you that much.
That's exactly
right?
Correct.
Who has been sleeping in his room for the last 7 years? Who was the first friend he had in the wizarding world? You know? Hedwig.
Right. So what is the decision that would be being made here? Because a big portion of what we have going on is that Hedwig's death is supposed to represent Harry's childhood being left behind him, along with Privet Drive in many ways. So this all has to do with the Battle of the Seven Potters, where she is believed to be hit with an Avada Kedavra spell.
Right. As far as we know, yeah, she just dies right there. But it's hard to say, you know? She gets hit with something, you know? And Harry loses track of her. It's not great, but there's a lot of chaos happening. They just have to fly off. She's in the cage. She couldn't even rejoin the fight if she wanted to, right? It's different than in the movies, right? All we know, drops the cage. Here's the thing. Why doesn't she come back if she lives? Well, I'll tell you why not. Because from that moment forward, Harry James Potter is in absolute hiding for the rest of the book. Okay? The Death Eaters can't find him. She can't find him. They're doing everything they can not to be found.
Absolutely. So you want to know what would be absolutely amazing? It's even just giving me chills just thinking about it. Would be like, you're getting to the very end of the book. Voldemort is defeated. Harry is standing there with Harry is standing there with Ron and Hermione. And what flutters down and rests on his shoulder? But Hedwig.
Brings him a sandwich. Yeah. Oh, that'd be so good. All right. I like to think she's still out there somewhere.
She's out there.
You know, just Paranel, Flamel, and like, I'm still here.
I'm a bird.
You
thought you could take me down? You can't take me down!
You can't take me down, dude. I have the Philosopher's Stone. I've got the Elixir of Life.
Woo. That's a good point.
Yeah. That's the thing. If we crisscross the earlier theory, then she's fine. She gets hit. She's like, doesn't matter. I'm fine.
I'm good.
I'm
protected by stone magic.
Stone magic. My name means stone. I'm a philosopher. I'm an alchemist and therefore immortal. Next.
You're gonna suffer, but you're gonna be happy about it.
This one is from Gooey Chewy, who says, Bellatrix was wrong that it was just a fox she killed. It was Florean Fortescue in an unregistered animagus form.
Oh boy, okay.
Hey, brother! Bellatrix murdered Florean Fortescue.
Okay, so we're gonna find out basically right at the very beginning of Half-Blood Prince, right after Bellatrix and Narcissa go to Spinner's End to speak with Snape about protecting Draco, not Unforgivable, Unbreakable Vow, and all those types of sorts. So then we make it to the Burrow, where they're talking about people who have recently gone missing.
Right.
Amongst those people are going to be Florean Fortescue and, Ollivander.
But you know what? We get follow-up on Ollivander, right? We see him again later. This Florian information, gone. Out the window. Never to be seen again, right? Why is that? Because Florean Fortescue wasn't abducted by the Death Eaters. He was an unregistered animagus. And this is all coming out. This is the beginning of book 6. That means it's just after the end of book 5. At the end of book 5 is when everyone in the wizarding world learns that Sirius Black was not a criminal and that Peter Pettigrew, who's still alive, was to blame for all those murders. Right? He learns that he's also an animagus, a rat, just like Sirius Black. The news is out. Good news for Florean Fortescue, he's the fox, which puts him in a great position to do something about it. Bellatrix and Narcissa arrive at Spinner's End at a completely random spot and walk several blocks to get to Snape's house. Right? That suggests that that is like the predetermined landing spot for witches and wizards in Spinner's End. Because otherwise, why not just go right outside his house?
It doesn't ever make any sense.
And who's there waiting for him? A fox, right? And what are foxes going to be good at? Hunting rats. But he doesn't know where to go. So he's waiting for the Death Eaters to show up so he can follow them to wherever Snape lives because he knows that Peter is with Snape. They show up. Unfortunately for him, it's Bellatrix who shows up and she just offs him immediately, plan over. But that's why he's missing from Diagon Alley. That's why he dies and why you never find out. Because you do. You just didn't know because he was an unregistered animagus.
Florian, the fox, Fortescue.
Boom.
That wasn't bad.
Thank you.
I really liked the hunting the rat thing. That was that came out of nowhere. And you know who's at Snape's house at Spinner's End?
Exactly. It's Peter Pettigrew.
It's quite solid. Also, what the heck is the point of this particular scene? Otherwise, it's like you've got such a Chekhov's gun situation going on where it's like, I thought maybe an order, and it's like,
nope.
Why include this?
Just to demonstrate Bellatrix's like weird brutality. I don't know.
Lorem ipsum.
All right, guys, let's see if we can close out with one more here. Okay, this one is going to come from Tara Walker, who says that the Ford Anglia is actually a Horcrux created by Arthur Weasley.
Of course.
Hey, brother!
Did Mr. Weasley kill somebody?
Yeah, okay, so here's a really unusual thing, I did it again, that happens within the wizarding world, is that Harry and Ron take the flying Ford Anglia from King's Cross Station to Hogwarts, where they crash it into the Whomping Willow, where it promptly ejects them out into the lawn, and they're able to go into the castle and go about their way. And basically, it's never seen or heard from again until Harry and Ron also go into the forest to visit Aragog, and they are about to be eaten alive by spiders. You know how that happens sometimes. When the Ford Anglia comes out of nowhere to protect them.
Because it recognizes them, right? It has like a kind of, it goes feral, basically.
It does.
It gains sentience and roams the forest by itself, but still has memories of who its former owner / user, Harry Potter, was, right? You don't see that happen to like anything else. The only other thing that has sentience besides this are like wands, which it's not a wand,
right.
And the Horcruxes, like the locket and the diary. They come to life. They do things. And if anyone put their heart and soul into that car, it is Mr. Weasley, who's been fixing it up out back, a little illicitly, you know, writing loopholes into the law, kind of, below board, if you will.
A little bit.
Which is kind of what Horcruxes are. And by below, I mean like 6 feet under. They're really bad. But
yeah, because of the whole death part.
Because of the whole death part, the murder part.
So, okay, and I like that too, because you could easily see where this is like a massive fixation on the part of Arthur. So I think the exact phrasing is really what gets us there, is that he put his heart and soul into this particular project. But like, then if you have to like peel back the layer, it's like in order to create the Horcrux, you would have to have an instance where Arthur did successfully kill someone, but probably not on purpose, but his soul is split and he needs a responsible place to put it.
Right. So he puts it in the car. So who does he kill, right? That's the question. Was it while he was out flying around up in the air? Well, does he kill them with the car and that's why it's in the car?
Oh my goodness. Could you just imagine just like the immediate pain of having struck a muggle in a crosswalk by mistake?
We know that Ron has to confront
the
examiner because he's not a good muggle driver. So, it could be hereditary. That means he got it from his dad, who's also out there. Maybe it was the driving instructor,
Oh, no.
He's trying to get his muggle license, doing his due diligence. Boom. Whoops. Mobby. Sorry about that.
Arthur created a Horcrux.
Man. Put it in the car. It's like, don't tell Molly. That's why he really doesn't want to tell Molly, because she's going to get out there and see the car and be like, Arthur, this car's an awful lot like you. like a surprising amount like you. It just called me Molly Wobbles.
It shouldn't know that.
It shouldn't know that, Arthur.
It shouldn't know it.
Why is it saying it over the wizard radio?
That was the giveaway when the car referred to Molly Weasley as
Molly Wobbles. Guys, thanks so much for watching our Theories Out of a Hat video. I hope you enjoyed our unhinged ramblings and reasoning, some of which I think might actually be not that bad.
Not that bad. Yeah, that's the thing, is that you take a bad idea and you pursue it long enough and it becomes a good idea. Yeah.
Exactly. If you want to see this, do this a lot more, you can check out this other Theories from a Hat video. But otherwise, until next time, bye!